Hi everyone, welcome to Cover Creations. My name's Gareth, this is my little corner of the internet for playing my food. Today I'm doing something very indulgent for you. These are my giant salted caramel profiteroles. Absolutely gorgeous, brilliant dessert and easier than you'd think. Plus you can make these ahead of time. So not a day before, but if you're doing like a big main meal, you can make everything you need for that meal, then just whip back in the kitchen, put them all together. It's so easy. So we'll get started straight away. We're going to start with the salted caramel sauce because this is the one you can make the furthest in advance. So you can make this probably a day or 2 days before if you need to. And quite simple, but can go wrong. So we'll talk you through it. I'm going to start very simply, 200 grams granulated sugar. So you just want cane sugar, your white granulated sugar for this, works the best. So 200 in there. There we go. I'm not going to have much sugar left from the coffee. So we can just put that to the side. And now salted butter. So we're going to make this a salted caramel. So easiest way to do that, salted butter. So again, here you want 80 grams of this. And I've forgotten a knife. So you're just going to put it into, cut it down into little cubes. There we go, perfect, 80 grams. The reason I'm doing the butter at the start, one is it's always easier to have stuff prepped beforehand, but also that will let it come down to a kind of more room temperature. And when you're making this, you get quite a lot of foaming. So actually, if the stuff's really cold, that foaming can be straight out the top of the pan. But if you just get it done like this, you should reduce that down. So we can now just head straight to the hob. We'll start putting it together. Okay, so we're making a dry caramel here, so no water involved. We're just going to melt that sugar down. So you can flick it straight on. You want it on a sort of medium heat. And you're going to get a bit of a workout with this. So you want to keep stirring it. So eventually, at the moment, very granulated. But as we keep stirring it, as that heat comes through, it'll start to clump together. And then eventually it'll start to melt. So just sit here with it on that medium heat, stirring. Okay, yeah, so after a couple of minutes, as it starts to melt on the bottom, it'll all just start, sugar will start clumping together into little bits. Just keep it stirring. Now eventually what you'll get is it will really start to melt down. It'll start going that kind of golden brown that you want from the caramel. You just want to keep stirring until the very last bit of those clumps is kind of melted down. Okay, there we go. Last of those bits of butter. Butter, bits of sugar. So now we're just going to put that butter in straight away. And that's going to foam up quite a lot, but again, just keep giving it a stir. Wait till that butter has melted down. Okay, so butter's melted down, still on the heat. Just going to keep gently stirring. It smells wonderful. There's that real kind of beautiful sweet caramel smell. And you can often tell that with this. You'll know if it's gone too far at the beginning because you'll get that burnt smell. But this at the moment, just sweetness, just makes you want to eat it. Okay, so that's been going for a minute. Now you want 150 ml of double cream, if you can open it. Luckily, they sell these in 150 ml pots. So now we can just pour that in. And that's really going crazy now. We're just going to keep stirring that around very gently. Try not to spill it all over the side. And then really kind of whip it in there. Now if you're worried about it, just add the cream like really slowly. Still do the same thing, but yeah, you don't get so much of an explosion then. Okay, so again, we're just going to leave it on heat 1 more minute. Just let it bubble away. Give it a stir every now and again. Be gentle with it. And there we go. That's done. So just flick it off. And then as it's cooling, just keep gently stirring it around. What you'll see is sometimes it will start to clump together again. You'll get like these little, kind of, almost looks like little bits of butter. But if you keep giving it a good whisk while it's cooling down, those will disappear. You'll get this lovely smooth caramel sauce. Okay, so now that's exactly the consistency I want it. Really smooth, really silky. So we can just leave it there for 5 minutes. Now we'll just let it cool down a bit, and we can add our last ingredient. Okay, so now that's cooled down, we're going to add in the last little ingredient that really makes this a salted caramel. So you want to put in some sea salt flakes. Now, really would go for the flakes rather than any kind of rock crystals, just because they'd be way too crunchy. But whilst we've let that kind of cool down, means these won't dissolve, hopefully. So you'll get these kind of little nuggets of salt in there. It's just delicious. So you can put in a good teaspoon of flakes and then fold that in. I myself like this really salty. You know, if I'm going to make a salted caramel, it's going to be a salted caramel. So I'm putting 1.5 in. Just that couple of little extra. And then all we want to do is just gently fold that through. And that's that. That's your salted caramel sauce sorted. So now, I'm just going to pour it into a little jug without trying to burn, well, trying not to burn my fingers. Now, like I said, you can do this in advance. So that's its kind of perfect consistency now. So if you're just making this, then, you know, ready, go for it. But otherwise, you make this a day in advance, or make it a couple of hours in advance, let it cool, and then we're just going to blip it in a microwave for 30 seconds, stir it up, it will come back, and you'll get that kind of beautiful sauce consistency again. So, I'm going to leave that there, let it cool a bit, and we're going to get started on the profiteroles. Okay, so, time to make the profiteroles. For this, a couple of little things we've got to measure out first. So you're going to want 60 grams of plain flour. You're just going to want to sift that into a bowl, just so you've got no lumps in it. Always remember to turn the scales on before you do it. There we go. Flour done, and half of it all over the place, as always. So we stick that there, and then butter. So this time we're going to use unsalted butter. I'm just going to want 50 grams of this one. Definitely don't want it salted, a bit weird tasting. So that's your butter all ready. Now eggs. So you're going to want 2 medium eggs for this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to beat them, just so we're all prepped and we can pour them in when we need them. Done. There you go. That is everything you need to prep. We can go straight over, start putting it together. Brilliant. So, grab yourself a saucepan. Don't need too big a one. Actually, if anything, the smaller the better for this, because there's not going to be a huge amount of pastry. So, I'm going to turn that on, put in 125 ml of cold water, and I have measured out, and then our butter. And just plop that in. You're going to let that melt down together. Grab yourself a spoon. Always try and use a wooden spoon when you're doing this, if you've got one, or a plastic, just because metal spoon conducts. If you're doing anything where you're stirring it like crazy, it's going to gradually get hotter and hotter and hotter. You're going to burn your hands. And also, I suppose it works the other way around. Cold conducts into the whatever you're stirring. So we're just going to keep giving that a stir until it's melted down. There we go. So that's all nicely melted. We're just going to let that come up to a boil before we add our flour in. Okay, that's bubbling away nicely. So now, flour, tip in. There we go, get it all out. I'm just going to keep beating that. So just keep whisking it around. Okay, eventually it'll come together, you'll get this nice ball of it. And now you just want to keep heating it, keep kind of stirring through it, just for 1 minute. Okay, after a minute, just turn the heat off, take it off the heat, we'll just let it cool down for a little bit, just a couple of minutes. Okay, now it's kind of cooled a bit, we just want to beat in the eggs. So you're going to add them a little dribble at a time. Just keep mixing it until you get like this nice smooth paste. And a bit like that, and just whisk it in. Okay, so now that's all mixed in, I've got this kind of stringy paste in there. Looks like a good kind of cake batter, really. So now we just need to get ourselves a baking tray, a little bit of lining on it. You want to divide this into 8 pieces. Just plonk them on your baking tray. Nice and simple. So takes a bit of doing to kind of work out exactly how much to put in each one. But you can be quite rustic with this. By rustic I mean rubbish at it. So you can get yourself a nice little dollop like that, put it on. Perhaps if I put it there so you can see it. And that's it. Now, if you end up with a little bit left over at the end, don't worry about just putting a little bit on top of each one. They're going to look not like perfectly round, but I kind of prefer that. Mostly because I'm lazy. There we go. So 8 roughly equal lumps of choux pastry. They're going to be about the size of a golf ball. They'll sit a little bit, but they should puff up nicely in the oven. So now you just want to stick that in the oven, 200 degrees C for 10 minutes. And then we're going to turn it down to 180 degrees C for 20. Just because of the size of these. If you decide to make these small, like any normal kind of tiny little profiteroles, you're probably going to make about 15, 16 out of this. And then you just want to cook it at 180 for 10 minutes. But these should be a bit larger. I kind of prefer that. So I'll whack those in the oven. Give them 10 at 200, then just turn it down at 180, 20 minutes more, and they should be done. Here we go. So they've had their half an hour. Let's see what we got. Fingers crossed. There we go. That is exactly what I'm after. They've swollen in size from basically a golf ball to almost a tennis ball size. Absolutely fantastic. So all we got to do now is just let some of that steam out. So they're pretty hot. Just get yourself a skewer or something. Make a little hole in the bottom of each. And then just stick them on a rack. And that should let that steam come out of the profiterole. Okay, so now they're done. They're just going to cool. So this is what I said. You can do this well ahead of time. So you got your salted caramel sauce, that's all done. They're just sitting there cooling. Cook your dinner. And then when it's time for dessert, you can come back in and put it all together. So the one last thing we've got to do is just whip up some cream. Okay, so for 8 of these, you're going to want about 150 ml whipping cream, and we're just going to whip it to stiff peaks. And again, you can do this ahead of time, shove it in the fridge, and then when it comes to dessert time, grab everything together and just build them. And now I'm covered in cream. So there we go, cream whipped, just whack that to the side or in the fridge, and then everything is prepped. We've just got to wait till we're ready to put it together. Okay, so dinner's done, now we're ready for that indulgent dessert. So, nice and simple, grab yourself one of your choux buns, being careful not to chop into your own hand, because no one wants raspberry sauce with it. Just cut them, leaving them attached on one side. Grab your bowl, and then you're just going to fill that with your whipped cream. Get a good dollop of whipped cream in there, like so. Lovely. Pop them in. Okay, and once they're done, caramel sauce, which is cooled down a bit, just pop it in your microwave. Give it about 30 seconds. And that'll be ready to pour over the top. Okay. There we go. Yeah. Just that quick blip, and it's brought it back to beautiful sauce consistency. So now we're just going to pour that over the top. Like so. Perfect. And there we have it. My salted caramel profiteroles. My giant salted caramel profiteroles. Absolutely beautiful making this yourself. It's so much better flavour really. And it isn't an easy thing to do. You know, when you look for how to make profiteroles, it's always, this is quite a hard recipe. It's more forgiving than you think. And once you do give it a go, you start making your own, you'll never look back. So I hope you give it a go. I hope you enjoy it. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.